4 years ago, Darkest Dungeon 2 launched as one of the most controversial sequels in recent memory. Epic exclusivity, drastically different gameplay, and a community split right down the middle. Hey folks, I'm Ash, and I completely missed all of it. So today, I'm jumping in with fresh eyes to answer one very simple question. Is Darkest Dungeon 2 actually worth your time in 2025?
Hold fast, for who knows what lurks in the beyond.
To understand why people were so divided, you need to know what changed. The original Darkest Dungeon was about control. You planned your expeditions, you chose your targets, and you prepared for very specific threats. Sure, RNG could still wreck you, but you had complete agency in how you approached each challenge. Darkest Dungeon 2 throws all of that out of the window. Once you pick your team, you're on a road trip from hell where everything is randomized. The enemies, the events, the locations, the rewards, all of it. You can try to avoid the worst of it, but you're mostly just reacting to whatever the game throws at you next. However, the reactive gameplay also creates this constant tension where every decision feels crucial because you never really know what's coming next. In the original, you could retreat when things got dicey to rest and regroup. But here, you are committed to seeing this nightmare through to the end, which makes the combat feel like a desperate struggle for survival, and that right there really made an impact on me. That said, I do understand the other side as well. If you enjoy the methodical nature of the original, this feels like complete and utter chaos. And honestly, it sometimes is. There are runs you will fail through no real fault of your own, which can be frustrating if you invested nearly 2 hours in getting these characters safely back home. That is perhaps my biggest criticism with Darkest Dungeon 2. The runs drag on for way too long. The punishing difficulty, that is right up my alley, and I don't mind getting obliterated by a boss I underestimated. But that whole try, die, repeat process becomes a lot less satisfying when each attempt takes 2 real-life hours. There is an option to increase the animation speed, and that does help a bit, but the runs are still significantly longer than in most roguelikes. I would like to see at least a third of each region trimmed down because a couple of fights against pigmen are engaging, but by the 7th encounter in a row, it just starts to feel like pointless padding. This length issue is really frustrating because it undermines what is actually a very solid gameplay loop. Choosing your routes on the branching paths, weighing bad options against even worse ones, trying to squeeze out any advantage you can, all of this creates genuine tension and dramatic moments. The heroes are generally the center of these types of moments, and they work a lot differently than in the original. Instead of being individuals you nurture and grow until they become godslayers, or just randomly kick the bucket, Darkest Dungeon 2 treats them more like templates or classes. They're mostly blank slates that you build up during each run and then reset all the way back to 0 once it's over. Well, not exactly 0, as there are some roguelite upgrades you can unlock after every run. We're talking hero variants, new items, and passive improvements. These are not massive stat boosts that trivialize the difficulty. Darkest Dungeon 2 isn't one of those games that expects you to fail dozens of times before you unlock enough stats that you can actually win. The upgrades are mostly there to add a bit of spice and personality to your crew of misfits. Much like the original game, each character has a wide selection of unique and specialized skills, as well as obvious weaknesses that you're going to need to overcome. Take the Leper for example. He is an incredibly durable frontliner capable of cleaving enemies in half with a single swing. However, he is only able to target enemies in the first 2 ranks, and he relies on direct support from his team to overcome his cripplingly high mischance. Every character follows this power but at a great cost sort of philosophy, which makes assembling your party very engaging. Despite there being only a dozen heroes to choose from, the way they interact with each other, the way you can equip them, and the way they perform in different positions gives the combat a lot of variety and a surprising amount of depth. The enemies deserve credit here as well, since even the most basic ones can seriously mess you up. But I honestly really like that, because it actually encourages you to use debuffs and defensive abilities. Two things that are generally useless in these types of games because the best form of crowd control is just killing the enemy. You can still focus on dealing maximum damage and picking people off in Darkest Dungeon 2, but the positioning system makes that much harder to pull off. Each ability can only be used in certain ranks and can only target enemies in specific ranks. You cannot just rely on one strategy, you have to adapt and plan ahead to make the best use out of every character. And with the difficulty being fairly high, every fight becomes a strategic, intense struggle for survival. Failure is not only punished by a lack of health that is not easily replenished, but also by a loss of sanity that can drastically affect your overall chance at success. Once you hit 10 stress, your character is likely going to break, straining their relationship with the rest of their team and crippling their performance. But there's also a much smaller chance they'll rise up defiant, ready to face the horrors with renewed determination. It is rare enough that you always expect the worst, so whenever a character stands up triumphant and rallies the team behind them, it creates this genuine moment of relief and pride. They actually did it. These moments work so well because of the stellar presentation. Even though Darkest Dungeon 2 has switched from 2D to 3D, the grim and oppressive atmosphere has not changed at all. Every moment feels like a desperate struggle against unfathomable evil. But it's not all doom and gloom. The combat animations and sound effects are punchy, especially the critical hits, thus giving you the hope that maybe, just maybe, you might actually pull through. These moments of glorious victory are often punctuated by comments from the ever-present narrator, the late and great Wayne June, whose voice honestly elevates pretty much any scenario.
Sweat-soaked brows, unsteady stances. Exhaustion takes hold.
So despite playing Darkest Dungeon 2 obsessively for the past few weeks, hearing him shout during combat still gets me hyped. If this was everything Darkest Dungeon 2 had, I would have been satisfied. At this point, I got 30 hours out of it, and while the runs do drag a bit, it had enough depth and complexity to warrant a playthrough. But then I tried the secondary game mode, Kingdoms, and honestly, I was blown away. It addresses my biggest complaint with the main game, the lengthy runs. Kingdoms lets you take on massive adventures in very manageable 20-minute chunks. Your goal is to protect the land from raiders, monsters, and eldritch horrors by upgrading your bases and sending out groups of heroes to solve quests, defend the innocent, or just take the fight to the enemy. Unlike the base game, it's all about planning ahead since traveling around the map takes time and the enemies are everywhere. Which inns do you defend and upgrade into fortresses, and which do you ignore? Do you stretch yourself thin trying to defend everyone, or do you make sacrifices? Which heroes will you use, and are you okay risking them dying because they aren't coming back like in the main game? If this sounds eerily similar to the original game, that is exactly right. Kingdom scratches that same sort of strategic itch while keeping Darkest Dungeon 2's much tighter gameplay. It's still a bit limited in scope as it is a relatively new game mode, but I had so much fun with it that I sank another 10 to 15 hours on a single campaign. And things are only going to get better in the near future as Curse of the Court update is launching on August 28, with a new faction, new maps, and additional content. But if you don't feel like waiting, you can already start tweaking things thanks to the best feature in gaming as a whole: and that is mod support. You can add ridiculous new heroes like the mighty refrigerator, make enemies much more talkative during combat, or even install a complete overhaul that changes the entire experience. The choice is yours. You can make your playthrough as brutal or as forgiving as you want, and I love when games offer players that kind of freedom. Darkest Dungeon 2 is a brutal but rewarding journey. It is a roguelike that forces you to live with failure and make the best out of it. It is not Darkest Dungeon 1, and it was never meant to be. And that is exactly why it was so controversial at launch. But coming at it now, many years later, and without any of the baggage, it honestly feels less like a misstep and more like a bold new direction for the series. Not better or worse, just different. So if you bounced off it at release, I think it is well worth giving it another look. And if you are brand new, there is a punishing, atmospheric adventure here that might just get its hooks into you, even if it does occasionally beat you into the dirt. As for me, I've put 40 hours into the game, and honestly, I'm already planning my next run. And when a game can keep you that engaged for that long and still leave you wanting more, it has definitely earned its place as a game worth playing. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see more stuff like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe, ring the stupid bell, pet your favorite ancestor, and do whatever other nonsense you gotta do these days. Thank you for sticking to the very end, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye bye!